And hello again, boys and girls. Welcome back to our channel. And it's, of course, your host, Marley Startled. And we are continuing on our campaign. We had just finished the Battle of Antietam, and we were now moving to the Battle of Fredericksburg. Right now, our army's in very good shape. We have a very strong 3-corps size, and we have plenty of equipment from the Battle of Antietam. And I believe that the next battle will also be pretty easy with the Battle of Fredericksburg due to the damage we've inflicted upon the Union Army. Of course, this is still the early stages of war. After Gettysburg, we are going to start seeing a marked change in Union manpower, and eventually it'll become a much harder affair. But right now, the combat is still pretty even. So hopefully this means that we should have some pretty plain sailing for the next two battles. Of course, our main effort will be trying to flesh out our 3rd Corps and try not to take too many casualties. As you can see here, we're not going to get many reinforcements back, and so we're going to try and hope to reduce our casualties for the next battles. So, without further ado, let's continue on. So, the first battle is the 7th of December 1862, Prairie Grove. So, your army is ordered to probe to the rich farmlands and milder climate of Arkansas for suitable winter camp. Scouts have reported Yankee troops coming from the north and the east to attack your vanguard at Borden's wheat field near Prairie Grove. So, here we are. It's a defense map, so I'm not too worried. I've got 21, so I should have 12 corps ready to go, so I'm not going to be too worried about this battle. Your vanguard is attacked at Borden's wheat field. There's no time to withdraw, so you must prepare to defend your position. So immediately remove the cavalry and bring out the cannons. Bring out the cannons. Because as you probably find out, our cannons now are disgustingly well equipped. And of course, our general mildly will move forward as well. We could move along the fence line, but we're not going to do that yet. Though I have potentially do want to move and hold this line here. I'll have to wait and see what occurs. Because I'm not really too memorable about this battle. Anyway, our cannons are of course going to move straight behind the line, like so. And we're going to move up our final cannon over here, just in case we do get any more reinforcements on that sector. Means we will have some weak cannons on the left, but we have some pretty well equipped troops on the left hand side. So fingers crossed it's not going to be too bad. So far so good. Cavalry has been more or less contained. But we are beginning to see troop movement on the left, so we may start moving troops on the left to contain that. I'm going to keep on moving to wipe that corps out. pretty comfortable with how things are going right now. Might move mildly over here just in case. Let's take too many casualties. That's more or less contained. There's no point continuing on that attack. So we'll move our troops back this way. Troops getting very tired now. We'll leave this core over here just in case. I mean, we could potentially be aggressive here. Finally, our troops are very tired. I'm hearing charging, but no idea where from. We'll retreat troops back over there because that cavalry is beginning to challenge our flanks a little bit. I don't like my flanks being challenged. Bit of a nuisance there. I'm going to send these guys back as well, just to get rid of that irritation. So I've turned into a bit of a cluster. That cavalry is really getting on my bad side. I'm glad the skirmishers are gone. I could have formed some sort of semicircle instead, but again, my aim is to sort of destroy Union troops rather than allowing them to rebuild. This is probably where the cavalry would have come in handy. Knocking out tanks and so on. Not tanks. What is this, World War One? No, knocking out cannons. And there's this guy again, lurking. Those cannons on that hill have also proven to be a bit of a nuisance. And there's the cavalry. I was wondering where they were. Maybe send some scouts out. Got lucky there. Those cannons could have taken a bit of a pounding. That's 300 men back, I don't have to worry about anymore. Hopefully we can get a shot off of these guys. Or maybe not. Still, as casualties go, pretty good. Only 1,200 men. I should get most of those guys back. And We've got some palmettos. Not the best equipment, but hey ho, it is what it is. I don't think that's going to be too painful. I don't think it's going to break the bank for us. So I'm going to be quite happy with that result. Especially because now a lot of these guys are getting to the stage where they're becoming elite troops. Harper's Ferries. Okay, we can't afford Harper's Ferries anymore. How about a Springfield? No. Suppose I can buy Mississippi, but I'd rather buy something more expensive. Have to do it then. One five, 1 5. Get this cannon back up to snuff. And that is most of our army fully equipped again, so we can order 2 more corps up. So let's give these guys another Mississippi. Let's use some stolen weapons now, or some previous weapons. Another Mississippi. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, there we are. Can I use some more points for manpower? Not yet, but we will soon. The next, I think, will be economy, or the better weapons, and then some training after. But until we have this full core stacked out, there's no point doing more organization. We can put some more money into our supply base, because I am aware it will eventually start running out of ammunition for some of the later battles. Their army is pretty much tiny compared to ours right now, which is really good, according to our intelligence, which of course isn't the best, but they're just constantly going to keep on sending some more spattered troops coming towards us to keep making sure it's a bit of a challenge. Still, pretty easy battle so far. We're still doing pretty well in terms of maintaining troop numbers, so fingers crossed that continues. Anyway, 3rd of October 1862, Corinth. Our army is deploying to attack the Yankees north of Corinth. We need to seize this town, a critical junction in the northern Mississippi, and disrupt the Federal lines of communication. You lead the attack on the Federals' exposed left flank. The position on Memphis Road is exposed, leaving a significant gap near their center. If you move swiftly, you can crush them before the Yankees can send reinforcements. Of course, if we win, that's another 3,800 troops and another 75,000 dolans. If we lose, we'll best about maintain what we've got, and of course, if we really lose, we'll probably just scrape by. So, we need to push through the north. Let's see how well that works out. The Yankees have deployed their left flank at Memphis Road, leaving a significant gap in their centre. Their headquarters is established in this farm. So if we take a look, we can see there's a lot of woodland on the right flank, and there's sparse woodland on the left. So if we try and concentrate our punch on the left-hand side, hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll be enough to break through. The idea here is, of course, not to do too wide a front offensive, because if we do that, then we could potentially end up in a situation where our troops get mown down because we don't have enough of a punch-through device. So our main objective, or main advance, will be moving along the left-hand side like so, and trying to sweep the field from the left. If you try and push through the right, as you can probably see, there's a naughty-looking defensive line on that position here, which will be very costly if we try and break through there. So that's not really the aim of the game. So the aim of the game will instead be the advance on the right. And the cannons will, of course, move up here as well to form that punch. They were further up than to be expected. Should still be able to shift them off the position though. You're insane. I'm not doing that. Cavalry move round. Try and break through on that right flank. Try and move round these troops. Keep on moving these troops round. Okay, these guys can start walking up. Now that our lines are somewhat reformed. We'll try and slowly wear these guys down. This is the main issue here. Trying to push these guys off. See here we're taking a lot of casualties from that engagement. May even charge it. Still charging, so interesting. Interesting. Keep on bringing those cannons up to really just bombard. Slowly sweep them off the field. Oh, my guys are tired now, which is a bit of a shame. As long as we keep using the cannons as our shotguns, we should be okay. Good, with that farm secured. And this massive flanking action, we should effectively win this now. I'm going to give these guys an order to push like so. And just sweep the field. Quite a few casualties this one, but I feel like pound for pound we've done an awful lot more damage than they have to us. Oh crap, Yankee reinforcements to the north. Up. Retreat. Form a defensive line. Good thing we've pretty much wiped their army out before they've had a chance to do anything too rash. Pity I can't use those defences against them, but hey ho. It's maybe a battle where we take more casualties than we needed to. Alas, it is what it is. Sweep the field. What's the point? What happened to my cavalry? Oh, never mind. Yeah, 2,900 casualties, so I'm just about going to be able to replan my losses. But I lost 7,400 again. Casualty figures still pretty good in our books. And quite a few captured Harper's Ferry rifles now, so it's not too bad, that battle. It's just going to be a maintenance battle, which is acceptable for what it is.
Yes, sir.
I lost my cavalry commander. What a shame.
Yes, sir.
What a shame. So we can fill out one more course, so it's not too bad. It's a pretty acceptable battle. I would have, for what that battle was, it could have been a whole lot worse in terms of casualties. So let's just leave it at that, shall we? It could have been a lot worse than as expected. I wonder if I can go and get that higher level weapon again. No. The Harper's Ferry, yes I can. Anything else I can equip with Harper's Ferries? Springfield, Lorenz, Palmetto, Harper's Ferry, Springfield. No, that's a shame. Anyway, we can probably put some in our... Oh, what's logistics like? Ammo, 10%. I can give these guys logistics so they run out of less ammo, which is good. That means they can keep fighting for longer, which is pretty good as well. And we'll add one more group of infantry, which we'll just give Mississippi Rifles to.
Yes, sir.
Can I get some artillery with this? What sort of artillery do we actually have? We can give him a fancy artillery, like the 12-pounder howitzer. Give him a load of those. We could buy infills on the lenses, but it's not worth it. It's not worth it. The cost is just too much. Still, this is a pretty good battle. Pretty good state for now. They're getting 11,000 more men to be expected, really, because they've been pretty much getting clapped the entire time. But now it's time for our history lesson, shall we? So because of our glorious victory so far, we've defeated enemy Antietam, so they have a minus 7% army size. They have got minus 10% on enemy morale because they were beaten at Corinth. And of course, they have been defeated at Prairie Grove, so they've got minus 7% army size as well. So altogether, they've got about minus 40% army size and less morale, which means they should be pretty weak right now. But it's time for the fun part, at least for the Confederacy. That is Fredericksburg, so the 11th of December 1862. Major General Ambrose Burnside is the new commander of the Army of the Potomac, replacing McClellan on the 14th of November 1862. It begins a strategic maneuver to cross the Rappahannock River and advance to Richmond in an attempt to bypass our forces. His plan is bold, but executed very slowly. He decides to cross the river at Fredericksburg, but the necessary pontoon bridges were delayed too long, giving us precious time to reinforce the area. While the Union engineers tried to build the bridges, they are continually harassed by our sharpshooters, delaying the Union Army even more. After many days, on the 11th of December 1862, the Union Army is finally able to cross the Rappahannock. On the other side, our whole army awaits entrenched, occupying the heights south of the town. So if we win, we get a load of money and a healthy chunk of manpower, plus 20 to our morale, or 20 to our political influence. If we draw, we get plus 1 and get 6,300. And if we lose 50, so we pretty much lose the war. So you can't really afford to lose this one. See, they'll be crossing in 3 places from across these pontoon bridges to the south, moving through potentially the centre ground if they do establish themselves, and potentially moving in a mass assault in the north or the left flank. So, historical lesson, what was the Battle of Fredericksburg? So, as we've talked about, the Union generals were not particularly decisive or aggressive at this stage of the war. Under McClellan, although he did build a pretty solid army with a pretty well-trained and disciplined army, he was just not very capable of using it, and due to his personal failings as a commander, often overestimating his enemy and acting indecisively, he couldn't really achieve decisive victories. Coupled with his bad relationship with Abraham Lincoln in terms of like just at some stages Lincoln would go to visit him, and when he was in Washington, and McClellan would literally enter the house, then go straight up to his room without even talking to the president, which was sort of the working relationship they had together. And of course, McClellan viewed Lincoln very poorly, and Lincoln also viewed McClellan with sort of exasperation. So eventually McClellan is replaced, and a new commander is Mr. Burnside, or Ambrose Burnside, who is given the task to act offensively to try and push over and bring the war to the Confederacy. Now, Burnside is probably the memeiest of generals if you want to turn about strategy, because every single strategy he employs ends up failing badly. So as Burnside, he initially tries to cross, which seems like a good idea at the start, but due to delays, he eventually ends up crossing a river against entrenched Confederate forces. Now, this is a silly idea for two reasons. The first idea is that the Confederate army is very well enforced along stone walls. Second idea, he's got the river to his back, meaning that, of course, if the Confederate army was to move to crush him, he would run the risk of potentially losing all his forces that move across. And also, because of the nature of the combat and technology, where defense reigns supreme, it's just not a very good idea to attack on frontal assaults. Burnside does this anyway, and throughout the course of the battle, sends waves of troops against Confederate defensive lines, effectively getting them mowed down. Eventually, it got so bad that at one stage he wanted to lead the last charge, but was convinced not to do the last charge and retreat back across the Rappahannock River. It was not a particularly pleasant battle for the Union, and they were mown down in their droves, and often their dead and dying were left on the field. And at night time, when they were waiting to retreat, they could hear the wounded. It was not a particularly pleasant battle for the Union, unfortunately. This is a realistic issue of Burnside being aggressive, but his tactics and doctrine, or his strategy of how to be aggressive, was not particularly clever. Eventually, this was such a disaster that after an attempted mud march, which was another attempted sort of forced maneuver, in the winter, he was replaced by someone else. I think it was McDowell, but I can't remember. Who replaced him. It was a bad battle for the Union. It was a disaster. Now, you could say, on one hand, that perhaps if he got pontoon bridges early, he could have perhaps such a strategy was sound. But regardless, because of the nature of the delays and so on and so forth, it just was not a good idea for these frontal assaults. And Burnside really was a butcher in this battle. Now, he would eventually come up with the other wonderful idea of the Battle of Mine Crater, where later on during the siege of Petersburg, his corps, I believe, or his force would blow up a part of the Confederate line and then try and charge through and break through the siege. Unfortunately, again, it was a good idea executed poorly, and it led to troops being replaced and the new troops not being given ladders and not following the orders of going around the crater, and instead they went into the crater, and so they were mown down in what was a turkey shoot. Again, another case of a good idea or good aggressive generalship executed very badly. Yes, Burnside is really the most unluckiest or most memeiest of commanders in this war because of those really big things. It's a case for Burnside of the right idea of an aggressive mindset, but his execution was just abysmal. And so, unfortunately, he was not the right general for the job. Of course, Grant would eventually take over, and depending on where you sit as Grant as a commander of the Union forces, whether or not he was a butcher or whether or not he was a talented commander, you have to really just sort of make up your own judgments. Generally speaking, on the Western theatre, Grant mostly just did sieges, such as the siege of Vicksburg. So although he was aggressive, the nature of his aggression was not particularly decisive battle. And so he'd move up his troops, siege, get drunk, and then eventually take the position. But of course, that was a constant pressure. It was not particularly interesting or particularly decisive. And of course, I'm a sucker for decisive warfare, or decisive maneuver, which of course Lee is well known for, or General Lee is well known for. But of course, once Grant takes over on the east, you pretty much see more or less the same aggressive action, but just constant aggressive action, but not a lot of finesse. That's large amounts of troops sieging or doing frontal assaults just to wear down the Confederacy, which of course was a successful strategy, but of course it was an extremely costly one. So Grant was also deemed as a bit of a butcher. Of course, there are the defenders of Grant who do say that the Battle of the Wilderness and his constant manoeuvring was, of course, quite strategically sound, but none of his strategies were particularly stand out. Of course, Robert E. Lee's risky and highly famous maneuvers or most well maneuvers really stand out in terms of their sort of tactical or strategic genius, whereas of course Grant seems to be more of a plodder, and he's got the general idea: just keep on putting pressure on the Confederacy and just keep on throwing troops at them, and eventually the Confederacy will withdraw. Of course, it's very easy to look back in hindsight and say Grant was not a particularly impressive training, but he did win the war. And that's, of course, because he always put pressure. He didn't just win a battle and then immediately withdrew. He won a battle, threw more troops in, won a battle, or drew a battle, threw more troops in, drew a battle, threw more troops in, which was a tactic, and of course would eventually become the tactics of the Great War in World War One of constant attrition. So although Grant is perhaps the turning away of the war maneuver we see under sort of Lee, it's more the attritional plodding that we see and the siege or sort of trench warfare of the later war. So he was perhaps the general of the future for modern warfare for the First World War. But I've always been a sucker for grand wars of maneuver, whether it be Napoleon or Robert E. Lee. And so although Grant's tactics and strategy were successful and they did work, they were also a bit they didn't really particularly stand out. They weren't flashy, but hey, it got the job done. And unfortunately, Burnside is just not a particularly better version of Grant, a worse version of Grant, where he's got the aggressive mindset, but he hasn't got the strategic mindset or strategic genius or the sort of correct art of war to follow through that aggressive execution. But regardless, this Fredericksburg turns out to be a bit of a turkey shoot against the Union, and it was one of the sort of counterpoints to Gettysburg. So the Confederacy had Fredericksburg in terms of Union troops being mown down, and the Union would have, of course, Gettysburg, where Confederate troops were mown down on frontal assaults. And in fact, I believe there were parts of the Gettysburg battle where Union troops were shouting, "Remember Fredericksburg," or something to that effect, as the Confederate troops got the good news. And this is again a product of technology. Going away from the older muskets, we start seeing rifled muskets and the invention of the mini ball, which I believe had about an effective range of 1,000 yards. And if you change that to miles, you can see just how extremely volatile these mini balls were, and just how powerful and potent they were against infantry troops. And of course, what happened if you were shot in the arm? The odds are the arm was going to be chopped off, and if you were shot in the body, you were probably going to die because of the nature of the wound, and they would just punch fist-sized holes through you. Much was the war. And of course, you couldn't do the old Napoleonic-style warfare, marching extremely close to the enemy troops and then mowing and then firing your volleys and half of it misses, because now, by the time you march within spitting distance of the enemy, the odds are they've already mown you down because they're firing at range. And another little bit of trivia is that some military observers did note that in the charges, whereas of course in European warfare, a charge would normally result in one side retreating in good order shortly afterwards. In the American Civil War, the charges often led to the bitter end bayonet fights where units were entirely massacred, which of course the Europeans turned their noses up at. But it was just a product of how the Americans thought about war at this stage. They tried to bring the strategic mindset of Jomini, which of the war maneuver more maneuver warfare, of course, and so on from Napoleon, but tried to bring it into modern technology with mini bolts and highly accurate and potent rifles, which simply meant that it was not feasible. Of course, around after Gettysburg, you start seeing that siege warfare and the slowly gnawing down of the enemy, and you start seeing Grant's more traditional warfare, which is, of course, rather effective for this new technology. So we are beginning to see the end of the Napoleonic glory days of maneuvers and close on fighting, and beginning to see the rise of trench warfare. Also, at this stage, you can probably start seeing a trend here that the defenders generally of course, had a better time of things, simply because of the supremacy of the defense now, because of modern technology. Even though the casualties are fairly even, if you just do a Wikipedia entry for each battle, casualties are pretty even. It's probably more to do with the individual commanders and the constant charging and counter-charging, whereas, of course, if people had simply given up ground or just moved to secondary defensive positions, then the odds are their casualties would be much more even. Anyway, that is the end of history lesson. Fredericksburg, a great Union defeat, simply due to a strategy that became a bad strategy, executed poorly for the concepts of modern warfare, led by a commander who was aggressive but did not have the strategic or correct mindset for this new style of warfare, and resulted to frontal charges were not particularly effective. For the Confederate side, it was a glorious victory, and of course would set off for the glorious campaign of 1863, which would eventually lead to, of course, Chancellorsville, which was perhaps the glorious moment for the Confederacy before ending badly at Gettysburg, and you'll start seeing the gradual decline of the Confederacy from there. It's another draw. Well, not really a draw. If you look at in terms of actual damage done and the nature of the battle, you can see it's very much a Confederate victory. But if you just look at purely casualty-wise, it's a draw. If you think about if the Union can spare more troops, but if you think it has a greater strategic sense of the Confederacy defended their territory and crushed the Union offensive, then of course you can see it very much a Confederate victory in this regard. So on the left flank, we will send our best troops. In the centre, we will send our third corps, because not much goes on in the centre, and our second corps, which is our second best troops, will go on the right flank. Our reserves will, of course, be coming down to reinforce once the battle starts. So, the Army of the Potomac is preparing to cross the Rappahannock River at Fredericksburg. We destroyed all the existing bridges, but the Federals are using pontoon bridges that their engineers have been constructing for several days. We are delaying their engineers with our snipers, but they are progressing and will soon complete 2 bridges at this section. A few hundred meters away, they construct another bridge. 3 bridges have been built eastwards and allow control of the southern area of the town. The main attack is expected from this side. We have defended heavily Prospect Hill. It's a prime target for the Union because it controls the railroad that provides us with supplies and a fast route to Richmond. The hill that secures the Telegraph Road has very harsh ground, so probably the Federals will not attempt to attack us here. I mean, that's correct, they don't really attack there. Mary's Heights oversees a town. We prepared in a trench position that can resist any Union assault if they're desperate enough to attack us here. The stone wall situated south of the town is an extra defensive barrier that can stop the Union infantry from advancing further. Our snipers are harassing the engineers who will work night and day to finish the pontoon bridges. Enemy infantry advances, they're determined to secure the town. So we have 1 troop here, we have some skirmishers, and we'll leave our best troop here to fight. So this part, during the pontoon building, there was a lot of sharpshooters that delayed the Union, and then there was a very violent sacking of Fredericksburg in response by the Union troops. Not many civilians were killed during this, but the nature of the looting was so bad that Robert E. Lee was very upset by this, which you can probably understand because, of course, with sharpshooters and snipers, and if you're an engineer or Union troop constantly being sniped across the river, you can probably see why they'd be so upset. And that was, again, would see the more hateful parts of modern warfare with snipers and that being treated, and in consequence, the local soldiers and civilians being treated very badly by the new nature of warfare. Regardless, let us begin. So immediately we send off our scouts. We send these guys down here. These guys down here. And we equip these troops, or we get some second scouts to send up here. And we simply hold a position. This will not be particularly difficult for us. Quite the contrary, it'll be a very easy battle for us. I wonder if I can get these guys a bit closer without taking me out of the town. Yes. That cannon can do what it likes. I have no interest in it. And this is just a prelude to the battle, of course, just noting the siege of Fredericksburg, or the taking of Fredericksburg. I think if you look at pictures of the battle as well, the how do I put it? Fredericksburg ends up looking very much like a mess. No, I would not want to be a Union soldier moving over. It's interesting that the Confederacy did not actually base themselves on Fredericksburg. But I suspect they were trying to preserve civilian life, which is a novelty in modern combat. Now, of course, part of modern warfare is in fact using the civilian population as some sort of a shield, and in fact most of combat is now done in towns and cities because of that's how costly it is for the attackers. But this was a more simpler, better time. Or maybe they just didn't have time to move into Fredericksburg, who knows. I found it interesting why the Confederacy did not move to assault the Union positions after the very unsuccessful Union attacks. Perhaps they overestimated the Union strength, or maybe they took themselves too many casualties, but really it could have been a wonderful way of wiping out a strong Union contingent if they were to move forward. But again, it was a different kind of warfare, or a different style of warfare back in those days, where it was more of a gentleman's war, and so I believe they even had a ceasefire at one stage to help the wounded because of just how bad the Union casualties were. Yeah, I think because it was a civil war, there was more compassion on both sides. Until we get to the march to Atlanta, then of course the Union's not being very compassionate. But the Confederate commanders were very much the gentlemen of old, or at least Robert Lee was known as a good Southern gentleman. So it's understandable why I was sort of a gentleman's war here. You can see this is not a particularly challenging part of the level, and you can see also that their troop numbers are very diminished because of the damage we've been inflicting on them leading up to the battle. And that is because we've been destroying Union armies. If we hadn't been destroying Union armies, then we would, of course, be in a much worse state with a much higher risk of taking excessive casualties. We are beginning to see the rise of 2-star, 3-star veterans, which now will take a lot more to rout, which is a bit concerning. But with that, the battle is now over. We can stay here and keep mowing down more troops if we so choose. If we're going to game it a little bit. I'll wait for these two to charge over. Then once they're finished charging over, we will of course do that. and potentially use these two scouts as or skirmishers as bait. I doubt we will get prisoners. The battle will occur regardless of whether or not you hold Fredericksburg, but you may as well get killed while you're here. You can get a lot, I think, for the expert gamers who play on hard, you can get excessive amounts of kills using skirmishers. And so it's generally recommended for the high difficulties to learn how to micromanage skirmishers and so on and so forth. But then again, this is medium difficulty for the Confederacy, so you'd have to play it on legendary to really need it. I prefer having larger bulks of men who can take damage. Yeah, ammo's short, but not the end of the world. Oh. There's no need to... You can waste these skirmishers because they're not your own troops, but I tend not to. Withdraw from the town. Our remaining forces that were defending the town has withdrawn to the heights. On December the 12th, the Union has crossed the river with large parts of the Union Army today, and they seem to mobilise for an attack. So this is where it begins. The left Grand Division, commanded by Major General William B. Franklin, and consisting of 2 full corps, appear ready to advance. Nearly 45 men are approaching us. Concentrate most of your forces to protect Prospect Hill. Now, interestingly, I always thought of Fredericksburg as just a tiny battle. I never really thought of it as, how do I put it, as a as a battle of this scale. I always thought of it as just a battle over the town. But of course, when you play games like this, you realise just how big these battles were and the extent of the combat, which is really good. That's what I really like about these sort of games, is the fact that you can learn a lot more about history by playing them. In fact, that's what really got me into history as a kid, is that when I was a kid, I played Call of Duty Finest Hour, and I was like 10 at the time. And of course, playing that as a kid, I knew all about Stalingrad. I knew all about sort of the Battle of Bastogne, and as a 10-year-old, knowing all about that, I was really quite impressed. And my dad was quite impressed by that because of just how much I'd known, and that's how much I knew about these big historical moments. Of course, as you're older, it becomes expected, but as a kid, this is what really got me into history. And so when people say, oh, video games are bad, I always think about that moment and thinking that actually video games taught me a lot about history. And of course, if you don't learn about history, you're doomed to repeat it. So the aim here is going to be to set up a strong defensive position, maybe move some troops over here as well. And move some troops over here. And then move these guys up over here. Now we'll move our cannon cavalry over here as well. I'm going to move his cannons over here as well. I form my great and grand battery. But their troops numbers aren't that big because of how much damage we've done to them. So I'm not going to be too worried about the extent of the damage they can inflict upon me. Actually, the cavalry is going to move over here. Because I may be able to get some cheeky bits of damage on them. Gotta be a bit careful here. Because they do have cavalry. And so I suspect they know what I intend to do. The aim is to form a massed cannon battery sort of in this sector. So if anyone does dare attempt an offensive, they just get crushed. Oh, they got guns which are just that good. They do. Interesting. No, that can't be right. Yeah, they've got guns that's that good. And retreat from that position then. Cheeky little cavalry charge. And move back into this position. Now that I've moved forward. I can't push that because they've got enemy cavalry right there. Or enemy infantry right there, so if I try and push that, I run the risk of being blapped. I'll keep moving over on the left. Hello. And you run over here, away from the cannons, trying to blap us. I don't think they're going to push here. The AI is smart enough to know that this is a battle they can't win. And then we send these guys running again. Oh no, they are pushing. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out for you guys. And it's great for me, but... pretty much point blank. Run away. Send the reserves. I mean, I don't have reserves, but... if I did have reserves, I'd send them. I think they've only got really enough troops for one good charge. So I'm not too worried yet. See if I can find myself some more cannons. The line's secured again, so it's not the end of the world. And the cannons should hopefully make light work of any more troops. can't really walk across here because the terrain is so bad. It's a rough battle, but it's not too bad yet. Although I do want to reorder my lines, but I can't because of the nature of the combat. I was gonna stick it out and see what happens. I wonder if I can bring more cannons around here. Oop. And we got some good cover, but now the enemy's also in my cover, so no, after that first charge, I haven't got the manpower left. But that tends to happen in this game. The first charge is the scary charge, and after you've really wiped them out, you're pretty much good to go. The only time you've really got to be worried is if they've got so much manpower they can charge one after the other, and then you're sort of in a bad spot. No, not too worried about this Union charge. Not anymore. Once I've sent up the reinforcements, because my lines aren't stretched thin enough to be too worried about this. If they were attacking further on the right and so on and so forth, then I'd be a bit more worried, but they're not, so... That looks like a mass withdrawal of the sailor armies. So my troops are going to resume back into their original positions. These troops are going to fall back because they took a bit of a pounding. And then the tanks, the cannons, not the tanks. The cannons are going to come back forward. Resume this bombardment after bombardment. We do some more scouting over here as well. Maybe leave one troop here in case I get back capped. The AI does like to do that if it sees a capture point that's undefended. No, I can't touch that. I'm going to go back hide over here until my guys have got a bit of equipment. A pretty successful defense. I'm happy with that so far. The battle will come back over here. I don't know if they get a reinforcing corps. But you can see they're very undermanned. They're normally supposed to have about 1,500 per troop, but because of the damage we've been inflicting throughout the campaign so far, they're not wielding that much troops. Of course, this is the main part. We'll see what sort of troop sizes they have here, but I suspect it'll be more of the same. While we fight at the right flank, we've been assaulted at Mary's Heights. Behind the stone wall, with a large number of cannons defending the hill, the crazy Union advance will cost them. A chicken could not live in that field when we open on it. So the first thing we do is assess the situation, put some reserve troops on the flanks. Like so. Move this troop over here. Move these troops over here. And move the cannons to the front. And then the cavalry will move in as counterchargers on the flanks, like so. I'm potentially going to move the cannons as well, because there's no point having the cannons here when I'm going to get mostly assaulted in this sector. Oh, cool, I got troops here. Thanks. I have an awful lot of troops here coming up. Must be my reserves. Oh, God, more cannons. This is going to be a very, very bloody for the Union. They just don't have the troop numbers. It's one of those games that you can replay, because depending on what difficulty, the battle can be very, very different. So if you're attacking as the Union, this can actually be a very painful affair trying to break through these lines. Of course, if you're playing as the Confederacy and you're not doing very well, or you're playing on an ultra hard difficulty, then you're going to see masses of enemy troops, just wave after wave coming into you, and it's very difficult to hold. Or if you're just playing without destroying the Union Army in most campaigns on most levels, then you're not really going to see the sort of ease of which you're holding the forts, holding the land, which means the game can be very fun. Of course, I've had to do this because I don't want to get halfway through a campaign and end up getting soft locked because I can't win. Because I don't think it'd be very interesting for you guys if we start a campaign and we can't finish it because I don't destroy the enemy in detail. You want to see the entire process of the war. Of course, yeah, I will begin mobilizing it. Yeah, I was quite clever to attack in force, so they'll try and mobilize, move up together, and then collectively attack. But it's quite difficult for them to do when they've got such limited manpower. So I suspect they'll try and get one attack off or one charge, and after that one charge, they will resume back into passive combat. So you can see here that charge on the right. Will we get another volley off? Oh, they've decided to point blank. Good luck with that. You do really do get a sense of a Fredericksburg battle here. Like, you do understand the whole futility of the situation as well when you play this. That's what I like about this game. It's the fact that you do get a sense. It does almost feel like you get the theme of the battles by playing it. So you do get the sense in this battle of the futility of this assault and just how insane it was to actually try and attempt it. Even when playing as a Union trying to assault these positions, you do really get a sense of this is madness. Why on earth they decided to do this? But we can just go to fire speed now. I don't know if they get another day of combat here. My guys are too close to the front. Taken back a bit from the front line. Maybe it's just the cannons getting them. Just wave after wave. Of course, we can go on the offensive if we so choose, but we don't need to. So we're not going to. I'll just keep letting them move forward, and once we're ready, we can crush what's left of these guys. I'll only go on the offensive once they're worn out, because I just don't want the cannons to keep peppering me. That's a 3-star, I guess we will not rout until there's like no troops left. Just butchery, that's what it is. It's butchery. You can see why Burnside got the sack after this. I just really don't like those cannons. They're trying to get involved in a shooting match, but I can't win a shooting match with my best troops. Best troops, best guns, in cover, no chance. I mean, it might wear me down eventually, but look at the casualty figures. and the damage these cannons are doing. Cannons are really more for the morale effect, so although you're not getting like 2,000 kills, like these guys are, when the cannons count when you need to kill a lot quickly to get a rout. Because a loss of a position is really what can change the battle. As you noticed on that previous part, when I lost that front line for a little while, I was a bit like, oh dear. Because if a punch through does succeed, you could be in for a real bad spot, so you're trying to maintain that front line. Because all of these guys are equipped with Harper Berry's M1855, so they should have a pretty much on par range. No chance. I mean, that's the raking fire of these cannons. I do like Valbad Napoleons, they're so good. They're pretty much a must for the battering ram strategies, which we'll have to employ later on. I mean, this part is when we can go on the offensive. I mean, we probably could have gone on the offensive earlier, but... the trick is I want those cannons. Charge the cannons! Before it runs out of time. Oh, that's a shame. General, it's a hard fight, but we can still claim victory. I don't think it is, if we hold at least 2 strategic objectives, which we hold both of. Yeah, this ain't a hard fight. Of course, now the game is going to go laggy. We've got some Union troops there, but they ain't a threat. They ain't a threat, boys. I'll bring the supplies back. Okay, I need to go to turbo mode enabled, or performance mode. There we go. Actual bit of performance there. They're sending troops up, but I'm not worried. My armies are too big for that. I'd attach some skirmishers. Don't bother attaching skirmishers. Leave one unit here to hold the ridge. And tell these guys to stop running. And they're tired. I don't know what you guys intend to do, but good luck, that's all I can say. No, I lost a guy. Really? You are going to do this? Fine. Fine, we can do this. A weedy core. Nothing I need to worry about. A weedy core. I wonder if I've got cavalry here. I do. And that's an excuse to get more equipment. Ow. The broom strategy where you try and make a chain route. So what you do is sort of turn all the guys to walk and slowly push them forward, and that hopefully chain routes them because of the constant fire maneuver. I hate having to chase these supply wagons. I'm not too worried. Let's charge on it. That's a lot of cav. Nope. Nope. I got joking. You joking me? Let's move yourselves over here then. Move yourselves over here. This is more costly than wanted, but hey ho. It did the job. It was getting me some surrenders. Let them do what they want over there. It's none of mine. It just doesn't interest me. And then these guys in this form of another defensive line over here. Whatever this core is, it's no, whatever this core is trying to do, there's nothing to help them. Nothing can be done to save the Union Army. I'm hoping you surrender. No. Fine. I suspect. See, I think the supply AI has to go where where the armies are. So these supply wagons are obviously trying to link up what's left of the Union Army. It's just some counter battery on those cannons. I'm a bit fed up with those cannons. And with that, pretty much just waiting out. I probably could crush this if I wanted to. If I felt the need to crush this unit, which I'm going to do anyway. Yeah, Fredericksburg can be quite a uneventful battle for the Confederacy because you've already got a massive defensive advantage. At this stage of the war, the forces are still fairly evenly matched. So if you are destroying Union armies left, right and centre and achieving mostly victories, this battle shouldn't really be an issue for you. The only issue is actually recouping your manpower losses after the battle. In fact, most of the time, the biggest issue I have isn't actually holding this part of the front, but holding the south. The south can be really where the Union hits hardest. So we move back over here. Where we're holding to the last, apparently. When in reality, this is not any real problem whatsoever. I did like how the AI did decide to retreat when it saw me doing that flanking action though. Ouch. Yeah, I don't think you guys will be coming in for round 2. Although they have moved the cannons out for a final blap, but they ain't gonna help you. Concentrated cannons ain't gonna is really what saves you in a lot of these scenarios. Like as soon as I concentrate my cannons, the AI simply hasn't got the manpower to overcome the routes. Oh no, you captured my... go stand over here then. I think Stoneman's caused a problem, if I'm honest. You shouldn't have any troops left, Mr. Core, so let's not pretend there's going to be a massive enemy counterattack. I think we're both better than that. Oh crap, there is actually a large counterattack coming. Oh, run away. Well, not a large. It's just what's left of the guys who attacked down south. Trying to push forward. I don't know if they're scripted to do that, but hey-ho. Made me change my tactics. I've been lucky so far that when these events happen, I generally have already finished off a core, so I've got troops to spare. Also, the troops they're sending aren't the best either, so... Lucky in that regard as well. That's a massive cavalry corps. And by massive, I mean half-sized. I send some troops back here just in case they do decide to backcat me. Charge! So Knight has fallen. I think this is their final core in this sector. Oh no, they've got one core left. Yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. You guys bully. Oh, that's not fair. Don't do this, Mr. Cav. Come back over here. Save me from the naughty Cav. Oh, they've actually gone to capture the supplies. That's not irritating. So it's an interesting battle. The only thing I will say about the style of gameplay of this game is that often the first enemy assault is the hardest assault because that's where their manpower is the largest and the morale is the strongest, and where if they do punch through, then things can go really badly wrong. But after the first assault, if you can block it, it slowly gets easier and easier to hold unless they've got more reinforcements or they try and flank or outmaneuver you. But what I found is after the first assault, generally it's plain sailing in most of the scenarios, unless there's a large contingent of Union reinforcements coming. Or if you haven't been knocking the Union army down to size throughout the campaign, then in that case you can end up in a situation where maybe the second assault's going to be more potent. But this part here is normally the worst part of the battle. If you can contain here, then you're pretty good to go. No. Still, it'll be interesting to see my casualties. Hopefully it's less than 9,000. So, a pretty easy battle. I suspect the Union was large historically, but you can see here by the goals, if you can hold all three objectives, you win and lose less 50%. And also, if you hold Prospect Hill and at least Mary's Heights, it's very easy to win as the Confederacy, even if you are overmatched, just by holding a couple of bits of territory. In any case, in terms of the combat, we have lost a total of 6,910 infantry, which is a pittance. We can get that back very easily. 28 guns and 289 cavalry. They have got 50,000 troops of the Union, led by Smith, Pleasanton, Couch, Wilcox, Butterfield, Stoneman, and Reynolds, and 2,700 cavalry and 200 guns. They lost a whopping 135 guns. That's over half of their guns. And let's round this up about 5,000 is 10%, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 40, 35. So about, again, 70% of their army. If we add that on, yeah, about 70%, just over 70% of their army. And they have lost pretty much their entirety of their cavalry force. I have only lost 28 guns, and I suspect I'm going to get an awful lot of goods. Only one deceased officer by the looks of things, which I'm happy with. And in terms of goods, we have now captured 5,000 Harper's Ferries, 1,400 Enfields, 27 Napoleons, 1,200 Palmettos, which no one really cares about, and a whopping load of supplies. And that's about it, really. An easy battle, Fredericksburg. This is the first turning point in manpower where things will slowly start to decline. Anyway, now we have to rebuild. This is going to be a warning for you guys. I'm going to be ending it here, but I'm doing my rebuild first, and then we're going to take a look at the new scenarios coming up. So Fredericksburg, it is just that easy, the Confederacy. As the Union is a little bit harder. You really have to resort to brute force tactics. I feel like the Union campaign is very much brute force tactics late game. Union campaigns normally fairly fun with defensives early on, followed by mass offensives towards the late game, which is generally against trench lines and fortified Confederate positions, which can turn the game into a bit of a meat grinder, and your tactics change from sniping to quite literal brute forcing of the enemy positions with massed infantry waves, which then becomes a case of more about time frame of breakthrough and replacing losses from that. There was a few like that in the Confederate campaign, but really it's more towards the end game when that becomes extremely prevalent. So I'm glad I did have my better troop on my second corps down south, because of course by having that corps down south it was a bit easier to defend. And it was nice to have that third corps in the middle, because the third corps didn't really do much. This is of course where most of the troops took to battering, so this is where most of the resupply will have to occur. But we're slowly starting to see the rise of our veterancy now. as the battle goes on.
Yes, sir. Sir, yes, sir.
And we'll soon be on to our 4th core, which is actually very good for me. Generally speaking, I tend to always hover around the 3rd core limit in most of these battles. I suspect because I've been recording, I've been trying to play my best to my best, which sometimes could be a little bit stressful. Because sometimes when you just want to play, you just want to mong it and either cheat or save scum if you lose. Whereas, of course, when you're recording and you're going to upload to YouTube, you can't really afford to do that because it's a bit disingenuous and it gives people the wrong impression that you're somehow a god gamer, when in fact you can barely count to 10. 3rd Corps. These guys didn't take too many casualties, I don't think. Some cavalry losses, but nothing I can't replace. Yeah, 2 cav. You can also do a full cavalry corps if that's your sort of thing as a meme, but
Yes, sir.
cavalry is expensive to replace, and most importantly, it takes quite a bit of manpower as well. Not as much as, say, normal troops, but I prefer normal troops because they can actually trade fire more than cavalry. Cavalry is very opportunistic. Of course, towards the late game, again, when you've got massed Union artillery batteries, it can be very difficult to take cannons out with just 1 or 2 infantry troops.
Yes, sir.
So you do have the option to do a mass cav. And I found mass cav to be hit and miss. Sometimes it's very effective at chain routing. Other times it's a bit meh because they get volleyed once and they collapse, and their attrition ratio is fairly high. Still, that's all the 3rd Corps built up with plenty of troops to spare. Now I just have to replace some troops for the final corps.
Yes, sir.
Upgraded cannons. Upgraded cannons for this bad boy. Oh, howitzers. Let's give these guys 13 howitzers. These are all well equipped.
Yes, sir.
And I'll give these guys a cavalry corps. At least 1 cavalry corps per unit. Finally, we'll add another infantry division. Let's see, let's go for, I can't afford a Tyler, Texas, but I can afford a Harper's Ferry rifle and a CS Richmond, which I'm going to get for a different force. I'm not going to use it here. First 1,000, and we've got 1,000 spare. Finally, let's upgrade our armies. So let's go with marksman. Marksman for the fire rate. Look at that, firearms. What does firearms actually do? Unit accuracy, yeah, I'll take that. Give me accuracy any day. I'd rather have a slower reload and more accuracy. I think medicine has really been to our benefit because we are able to really make back a lot of our losses. Cool. This core actually got pretty well upgraded. Yep, that's fine. That's all well equipped and well supplied. And then this is all well equipped and well supplied. So our next battle. So what are they actually getting? 49,000 more men, so they're moving up to about 63k. So next battle is Stones River. Actually a pretty difficult battle because they do get a horde of reinforcements. So if we take a look at the battle, see what troops we can bring. We can bring we can bring 3 corps. So I will, how big are my corps? So this will be a fairly limited battle. So I can just focus on building up and upgrading my units. So let's give these guys the CS Richmonds. That's the best rifles I can give them, I believe. I think Harper's Ferry's better. Yeah, Harper's Ferry's better. An extremely well-equipped army. Springfield, let's go for that Harper's Ferry. Harper's Ferry.
Yes, sir.
Lorenz's, I just like Lorenz's, so we'll keep Lorenz's. This guy's got Enfields, that's understandable. But they're not as good as Springfields by the looks of things, so guess what? I'll give these Springfields over. A very elite force. I'm very impressed with my army right now. Lorenz's are cool.
Yes, sir.
I think that is that. Do these guys need any better weapons? Nah, they're all Mississippi'd. All Mississippi'd up. Good. So, because we can't upgrade our armies, we'll be going for economy and training. Economy and logistics.
Yes, sir.
I lied. Anyway, we've got one more battle, Everettsville, before we move on to the next battle. Stones River is a bit of a mix, hit and miss, because it can be a very difficult level, depending on how well you've been fighting the battles. But also, on the second day, the Union get a significant amount of reinforcements, like pretty much a full corps, which means that it's always better to win on the first day if you can, because of the after trying to break through the sort of strong defenses of the Union lines, it can be a very difficult affair to hold off once your troops have been knocked down a peg or two from the damage inflicted by the Confederate Union troops. In any case, we have done exceptionally well. We have now got 2, 4, 6, 70, 2, 4, 6, 7, about 77,000 men under arms against 63k, meaning that we should have, if this intelligence report is correct, which means that we should be in a very good spot to push the enemy. And because we've been knocking them down repeatedly, their training is not very good and their army is not very good. But that's it today, boys. Tomorrow we will continue on our Confederate Civil War, or Ultimate General Civil War Confederacy campaign. Been going very well so far. However, this is still the good point. It's slowly turning now. Once we get past Gettysburg and move to Chattanooga, that's when the good days of the Confederacy begins to waver. You can start seeing the reduction in manpower. Oh, we still got to see, now we're only getting 8,800. Next battle will be less than that, and so on and so forth. But the real main trick is to maintain or go with high politics to get bonus manpower and money, and also go with high medicine to get your troops back. And then use captured equipment, which I've done, and make sure you've got the right equipment so you can just really progress. Anyway, that has been me for the day, boys. Hope you enjoyed. We will hopefully continue on tomorrow. But if not, I will see you when I see you. So with all being said and done, adieu.